Hey friend, Graham here from recordingrevolution.com, and let's talk about virtual instruments. I think one of the common questions I get more often than almost anything else these days, which is telling, is Graham, can I use virtual instruments convincingly in my song? If so, which ones can I use? Can you get away with fake instruments in a professional release? Are we past the era of needing to record real instruments in any way? Can we just do it all completely in the box? Let's break it down. I love questions like this because basically people are asking for the line. Like, show me, where's the line for like how much I can fake with fake instruments, and we'll talk about what's really fake or not, and how much do I have to play with real instruments. Now, if you're a keyboard player, man, the sky's the limit for you, as we'll get into in a second. Guys like me that can just punch on a 2-octave keyboard controller and then have to fix it with MIDI functions later, we're kind of screwed because all I can do is play real instruments or not play real instruments. I can't really fake much. But there's even things for guys like me out there. I thought I'd be practical today, so just give you a list of actual real virtual instruments you can go out and get right now that I think you can use in a convincing way. Think of them as like my stamp of approval for whatever that's worth. And yes, I'm getting over a cold, so in my head, I sound like Kermit the Frog. I don't know what I sound like to you, but we'll deal with it. Now let's start with someone smarter than me. In a talk that he gave at Oxford University, one of my favorite mixers, Andrew Sheps, said, "All that matters is what comes out of the speakers." Couldn't agree more. Your fans, your friends, yourself even, once you get over yourself, no one really cares what it took to get that song to sound the way it sounded. All we care about is what we hear out of the speakers. Does it sound good or not? You should never ask like, was this recorded live with real instruments or a virtual instrument? Was this recorded with a cheap mic or an expensive mic? It doesn't matter. What matters is, does it sound good? For example, a lot of film scores these days are all done with sample libraries. So with that in mind, here's a list of elements for a song that you can use a VST or a virtual instrument for. Piano, kind of an obvious one. Using tools like easy keys, you can get a really convincing piano sound with easy keys and the like. Drums are a great example. Even a tool like Easy Drummer, you can do your entire drum performance with real recorded drums that were then sampled. I've done an entire EP using Easy Drummer as my drummer. Bass. Okay, IK Multimedia, I love the guys over at IK. They've got a great plugin called Moto Bass, and this has become a favorite for a lot of people who want to play MIDI bass notes. And hit songmaker Charlie Puth has this great video that he does showing how he kind of put together the sounds for his hit song Attention. And the bass that he uses is just a little VST on his keyboard. I'll link to the video in the description. You should go watch it. It's pretty cool. Strings and brass. Okay, so a lot more string work is being done with virtual instruments. Even like I said, film scores are using some orchestral sample libraries these days pretty convincingly. Some good examples are East West. Spitfire is another one. They sound fantastic. Brass is a little bit harder to be convincing. We're talking about trumpets and trombones and tubas and things like that. But if it's not the main instrument of your song, it's just a supplemental piece of the pie, then you can totally get away with brass virtual instruments. Organs and synths are one of the easiest ones to pull off with VSTs, of course. There's some great Hammond B3 emulations out there. I saw a brand new one from IK at NAMM this year. Just super good modeling. They sound super convincing. Synths, of course, aren't real. They're synthetic, but you know what I'm talking about. And then down to the little ones, tambourines, shakers. I mean, every kind of percussive element you can imagine. There are plenty of loops and also samples that you can trigger that sound amazing. And honestly, a lot of them come free with your DAW. Logic Pro, for example, ships with a bunch of great samples of shaker loops and other kind of percussive loops that are really nice to be able to add into your song. Now, what instruments do I advise against using a virtual instrument plugin or VST for? Let's start with my favorite instrument, guitar. There are some virtual guitar plugins out there where you hit a key on the keyboard and it either plays a note or triggers a chord. And they sound cool-ish. I know my buddy Ilfactor, he's used a lot of these before, and he'll mix them into songs. But keep in mind, he does a lot of electronic, a lot of pop music, and so the guitar isn't the featured instrument. If that's you, then yeah, play with it. They have some really cool sounds. We used one or two on our most recent EP. However, I think it's really hard to get away with a fake guitar. There's just no way around a real person playing a guitar because of the nature of the instrument. So I think if you have guitar as a key element, I think you just need to play guitar. And if you can't play guitar, there are plenty of people on planet Earth who play guitar, and they would love to play on your record for a small fee, or your friends for free if they're cool. Maybe just give them a beer or have them over for dinner or something. But I think you need to go with a real guitar player. Now that doesn't mean you can't use a virtual amp. A virtual amp is totally different. We'll talk about that in a second, but just a real person playing a real guitar through real amp or virtual amp doesn't matter, but it has to be a real performance, in my opinion, to sound convincing. And as it relates to amps, I have a real Vox AC15. I've played through Marshall half stacks. I've played through Fender Blues Deluxes. I've had a lot of fun amps over the years. I don't play through any of them anymore. Sold most of them, still have my Vox, but it just sits on the floor so I can just look at it and feel cool. I just play through a virtual amp 99 times out of 100. I'm using the Avid 11 rack. And I'll do a video coming up on real amps versus virtual amps, but I use actual amp emulations on a box. I've used a lot of software as well. IK Multimedia has some great plugins. The virtual amps themselves are getting really, really good. So I'm grateful for that. The way they've done the impulse responsive cabinets and microphones, those are super convincing these days. I think you can totally use a virtual amp, that's the punchline, but a real guitar, please. And finally, vocals. I wouldn't really recommend virtual instruments for vocals unless it's just a backing vocal. There's certainly instruments that will do nice choirs or cool background vocals in different genres, or even plugins that do just vocal chops for you. But for the lead vocal, just get a human being, if it's not you, and sing the lead vocal. That's probably one of the most important parts of the recording, if not the most important part. You got to get it right. You got to get a good singer. And if you are the singer, you got to practice your chops as a singer. You could play almost everything else virtually and get away with it, but you got to actually sing. Now, with all that said, I'm not saying you should just never play a real instrument and just do everything virtually. I think there's some amazing benefits that come from real people playing real music. Drums, for example. I know people love drum loops, and virtual drummers have gotten phenomenal, and I've used them. And poor drummers, they feel like they're getting replaced. But if you're a drummer, just let me tell you, and if you're not a drummer, hear this. Nothing, I think, can replace the energy that a real drummer brings to a recording, the nuances that he or she can bring to something, because it's not just a loop that fits and works, it's custom, even if it's just a little extra eighth note on the hi-hat every once in a while that just adds that. You don't even know how to quantify it. Drummers set the mood. So if I have an option, I will always choose to play with a real drummer over anything else and try to get away with everything else. If I had only a little bit of money to spend on instrumentalists, I would pay a drummer because they bring so much to the table. All I'm saying is, if you find yourself not making music because you're like, oh, I don't have a drummer, I don't know someone that can play cello, that's kind of an excuse now that you got to get rid of. I would say run to a virtual instrument, figure it out. Even the virtual instruments like Easy Keys or Easy Drummer, we don't even have to play the piano to trigger them. They already have like patterns that are convincing and can learn your song and fit in your song. Use them if it helps you get your song done, because they sound so good now. And at the end of the day, like Andrew Shep says, all that matters is what comes out of the speakers. No one can tell the difference. You can't tell the difference if you're honest with yourself, but certainly the fans can't tell a difference. So you're at a sweet spot now where you can go ahead and make the music, so don't let the lack of the musicians hold you back. But if you can work with real people, why wouldn't you? That's what this is all about at the end of the day, is having fun and collaborating and making fun music with other humans. Now I want to give you something to help you with your next song idea. I don't know if you're in the song generation, idea generation phase, or if you're already starting to record, but if you want your next song or EP or whatever you're working on to sound its absolute best, to sound radio ready, which is the term I like to use, even though we may not be played on the radio, that's sort of like that sonic standard where you would feel really proud of it playing against other stuff on the radio in terms of sonic quality, then I want to help you and give you my 6-step guide to a radio ready song. This is kind of like a roadmap. What I like about it is we're creative, so we're always coming up with random ideas and just trying things and starting in random places, but a little framework or a roadmap helps us say, okay, where am I in the song creation process? All I did was look at every major song that's ever been released, deconstruct the song creation process, and sort of outline the 6 major steps that every song goes through. Most home studio owners are doing 3 around. I found 3 to 4. They're usually skipping 2 to 3 of these stages. I don't want you to miss any of them because they all lead to your song sounding its absolute best. So I want you to go through all 6 of these steps. It's a little printout you can keep at your desk if you're old school and actually on paper like me, or you can keep it on your phone or tablet or whatever and just reference it when you're making your music. It's absolutely free. It's a fun, helpful resource, a lot of tips and tricks, but it gives you a framework and a map to follow. And it's all available at radioreadyguide.com. I'll link below the video also in the description. But just go to radioreadyguide.com, download it, follow it, and then use it on your next song, and then let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear how you get on with your next track you're working on, whether it's with virtual instruments or real instruments or with instruments from outer space. I don't really care. As long as it sounds cool and you have fun, then we're all down for that. Have a great day. Thanks for being a part of the revolution, and I'll see you on another video real soon.